Big Shaq was chilling by his own pool when a group of fancy women walked up and told him to leave, thinking he didn't belong there. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. As things got heated, secrets came out and everything was caught on camera, revealing a surprising truth that went viral online. What Shaq did next was a huge power move, turning their embarrassment into a lesson they'd remember forever. Before we get into this cool story, hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. The sun was shining bright over a fancy private estate, its light bouncing off the clear blue water of a fancy pool. You could hear the small waves hitting the pool's edge, along with some birds chirping in the distance. The air smelled like fresh chlorine and blooming jasmine, making it the perfect place for a quiet summer afternoon. Big Shock was relaxing in a shaded lounge chair, wearing nice swim trunks and a loose white tank top. His big size made the chair look small, but he didn't mind. He was just enjoying his day. He had a cold drink in his hand, with little drops of water sliding down the glass as he took a slow sip. His huge sunglasses reflected the sky, and for once everything was peaceful. No fans, no cameras, just him, his estate, and the quiet. But that peace was about to be broken. A group of rich women walked in through the fancy entrance of the estate, their fancy sandals making noise on the ground. Leading them was Hallie Thomas, tall, slim, and acting like she owned the place with her rich attitude. She wore an expensive beige sun hat, big luxury sunglasses, and a flowing designer cover-up. Behind her was Diane Williams, a woman in her early 30s with blonde hair and a look that said she thought she was better than everyone else. She whispered something to Alice Jeffrey, a younger woman in her early 20s who seemed a bit unsure but followed anyway. They were carrying big, expensive designer bags and towels. Their arms were heavy with luxury as they headed towards the pool area. "Darling, this place is amazing," Hallie said, looking around. "Can you believe we've never been here before?" Diane smirked. "Well, it's exclusive. Not everyone gets to come here." Alice hesitated. "Are we sure we're allowed here?" "Did anyone check in at the front?" Hallie just waved her off. "Oh, please, do you think a place like this would turn us away?" With that, the women dropped their bags onto some lounge chairs, taking off their cover-ups to get comfortable. Shaq sat in his chair, lowering his sunglasses a bit as the women walked in like they owned the place. He knew his house was huge, so big that sometimes people thought it was a fancy hotel. But these women didn't even ask if they could be there. He watched them, amused. They laid out their towels, told the workers what to do, and even put their painted toes in his pool without thinking twice. Then he heard Diane whispering to Hallie, who then looked at him. Diane whispered, looking at Shaq. Hallie looked him up and down, her lips tight and her face showing she didn't like what she saw. "I don't know," she whispered back, her voice full of dislike. "But we'll deal with it." Hallie walked over to Shaq, her heels making noise on the ground with each step. She gave him a fake, sweet smile. "Excuse me," she said, her voice too sweet. "I'm not sure if you know, but this area is just for guests." Shaq raised an eyebrow behind his sunglasses. He took another sip of his drink before he answered. "Yeah," he said in a chill way. "And who told you that?" Hallie laughed a little, like she thought she was better than him. "Well, it's obvious, isn't it? A place like this has rules." Diane crossed her arms. "We don't want any trouble," she added, sounding like she thought she was better than him. Shaq smirked. He'd seen this too many times before. He leaned forward, put his drink down, and took off his sunglasses to look right at Hallie. "Guess," he repeated. "Lady, I own this place." Silence. For a moment, Hallie's smile dropped. Diane looked shocked, and Alice's face turned red as she stepped back, realizing their mistake. But Hallie wasn't going to give up. She quickly regained her composure, her face changing from surprise to not caring. "Well," she said, lifting her chin, "anyone can own a house. That doesn't mean they fit in places like this." Shaq's jaw got tight. There it was. The hidden meaning behind their words. The prejudice was clear in every word. Shaq took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. And what exactly do you mean by places like this? He asked, his voice calm but strong. Hallie just smiled, but her eyes showed she thought she was superior. Oh, don't be difficult, she said lightly. I'm sure you get it. Shaq chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, I get it just fine. The air got tense. His workers nearby had stopped what they were doing, feeling the bad vibes. A few other people around the property were watching too, surprised by what was happening. Shaq leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms out. So, let me get this straight, he said, his voice slow and deliberate. You walk in here without asking, take over the pool, and then tell me. The guy who owns this place to leave? Diane shifted uncomfortably, but Hallie didn't flinch. We just assumed, Shaq interrupted. You assumed what? Hallie's lips pressed together in frustration. This isn't exactly what we expected. Shaq nodded. Right. And what did you expect? A long pause, no answer, because there was no good answer. Hallie squared her shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. Look, we don't want any trouble. We'll just speak to the manager. Shaq laughed out loud. Oh, please do. I'd love to hear what he has to say. Hallie frowned, her confidence faltering for the first time. Shaq pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. Matter of fact, he said, let me call my security team and let them know we have some uninvited guests. Hallie's eyes widened. Wait, that's not. But before she could finish, two uniformed security guards approached, responding to Shaq's signal. Everything okay here, Mr. O'Neill? One of them asked. Shaq gestured toward the women. These ladies seem lost. Maybe you can help them find their way out. Diane's face was pale. Alice looked downright scared. But Hallie? She wasn't done. She crossed her arms, glaring at Shaq with pure resentment. This isn't over, she hissed. Shaq smirked, shaking his head. Oh, sweetheart, it never even started. And with that, the security team led them away. But Shaq knew this wasn't the last he'd hear from them. Hallie Thomas wasn't the type to walk away quietly, and whatever she had planned next, Shaq was ready for it. Hallie folded her arms, her lips curling in a smug smirk. You own this place, she repeated, her tone laced with condescension. That's cute, but I don't think so. Diane let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. Do you really expect us to believe that? Shaq raised an eyebrow. Why wouldn't you? Hallie sighed dramatically, as if explaining something to a child. Look around, darling. This is an exclusive neighborhood, our kind of place. And let's just say you don't exactly fit the profile. Shaq chuckled, but there was no humor in it. He could feel the weight behind her words, the veiled racism, the entitlement, the way she said our kind as if he didn't belong. You must be mistaken, Hallie continued, waving a manicured hand dismissively. Or worse, trespassing. Diane nodded. I mean, maybe you work here, like maintenance, security. If you just tell us who's in charge, we'll make sure this misunderstanding doesn't become a bigger issue. Alice, standing slightly behind them, shifted uncomfortably. She wasn't as vocal as Hallie and Diane, but she wasn't stopping them either. Her eyes flickered between Shaq and her friends, clearly uneasy. But she stayed silent. Hallie wasn't done. She reached into her designer handbag, pulling out her phone. I think I'll just call security and clear this up. Shaq let out a slow breath. He wasn't surprised. He had seen this kind of thing before too many times, but that didn't mean it didn't sting. Instead of getting angry, Shaq leaned back in his chair, watching them. He didn't need to yell. He didn't need to prove anything. Go ahead, he said, motioning toward Hallie's phone. Call security. Let's see how that plays out for you. Hallie looked surprised. She didn't expect that answer. Diane, still thinking she was right, whispered under her breath. This neighborhood has rules. We don't want troublemakers here. Shaq's jaw clenched, but he stayed calm. Trouble? They were in his house, in his pool, and somehow he was the problem. Alice looked even more uncomfortable. She pulled on Hallie's arm. Maybe we should stop this. No, Alice, this is why we need to stand our ground. If we let just anyone think they can come here and act like they fit in, Shaq had heard enough. He stood up slowly, much taller than the women. Suddenly, they all paid attention to him, the man they had ignored. You really think I don't belong here? Shaq's voice was low and steady, but strong. Diane scoffed. It's not personal. We just have to keep places like this safe from, well, outsiders. Shaq sighed, shaking his head. Do you mean people like me? Holly rolled her eyes. Oh, don't act like you're the victim. We just thought this wasn't your kind of place. That's not our fault. Shaq looked at them for a long moment. Then, with a slow, careful move, he took out his phone. All right, he said, since you care so much about who owns this place. He tapped a few times on his phone and showed them a document. Here's the deed to this house. Here's the deed, he said, his voice calm but firm. My name is right there. I own every bit of this place. Silence filled the air. Alice gasped quietly. Her face turned white. Diane's smirk vanished, replaced by shock. Even Hallie, for the first time, looked shaken, but instead of saying sorry, she got defensive. So what? She snapped. Her voice was sharp. Money doesn't buy class. Shaq let out a dry laugh. Right, it doesn't. But it sure shows when someone lacks class. Holly's face turned red, but she had no words. Shaq crossed his arms. Now, let's talk about you being on my property without permission. Hallie swallowed hard. Her grip on her phone tightened. Shaq leaned in slightly, his voice lower. You were quick to call security a minute ago. How about we call them now and see what they say? That's not necessary. Hallie, not willing to admit defeat, forced a tight smile. Well, this has been an interesting misunderstanding. Shaq raised an eyebrow. That's what you're calling it. A misunderstanding? Alice, still staring at the property deed on Shaq's phone, finally spoke up. Hallie, I think we should go. Hallie took a sharp breath in, clearly angry, but she knew she had lost. With as much dignity as she could fake, she stood up straighter. Fine. We were leaving anyway. Shaq didn't move or blink, just watched as the women picked up their things, their confidence now gone, replaced by quiet embarrassment. As they walked away, he called out, one last thing. Next time, he said, maybe don't assume who belongs where. Hallie didn't look back, but Shaq knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Shaq had seen enough. He took out his phone and dialed. Yo, Kendrick, get here. Now. Minutes later, the sound of an engine announced the arrival of a sleek black luxury SUV. The car stopped smoothly at the entrance of the estate. The doors opened, and out came Kendrick, Shaq's assistant who always looked sharp and serious in his tailored blazer. Behind him was Michelle Payne, Shaq's personal lawyer. Michelle, in her late 30s, walked with the confidence of someone who had beaten much bigger opponents in court. Hallie crossed her arms when they got closer. Oh, what's this? Bringing in more people to help? Shaq smirked. Something like that. Michelle fixed her sunglasses and took out a folder. I hear we have a little mix-up about who owns what. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the stone path. She looked in charge, sharp, and ready to take down whatever weak arguments these women had. Hallie Thomas, Diane Peterson, and Alice Erickson, right? Michelle said, opening her folder. The three women tensed at hearing their full names. This property belongs to Shaquille O'Neal. He can decide who stays or goes. Michelle continued, but you came onto private property without asking. Hallie rolled her eyes. We thought it was part of a resort, an honest mistake. Michelle gave a knowing smile. But even after Mr. O'Neal told you otherwise, you didn't leave. You even threatened to call security on the real owner. Diane swallowed hard. Alice looked down, clearly upset, and Michelle took another step closer. If you had called security to remove a black homeowner from his own place, it could be seen as racial discrimination. Hallie's face got dark. Oh, please, that's silly. Shaq smirked. You ladies want to make the news? Hallie's nostrils flared as she took a deep breath. For the first time, she wasn't smiling or being polite. She was real. This isn't about race, she spat out. It's about keeping the right kind of people in the right places. Everyone went quiet. Even Diane flinched. Alice gasped. The words hung in the air, heavy and mean. Kendrick let out a low whistle. Wow, she really said that. Shaq folded his arms. Thanks for making it clear, Hallie. Now we know what this was really about. Diane grabbed Hallie's arm. We should go now. Alice finally spoke. Hallie, you just... Hallie pulled her arm away. Don't. We didn't do anything wrong. Michelle held out a business card. We'll see what a judge thinks about that. That was the moment everything changed. Diane's face went white and Alice stepped back. I didn't mean for this to go so far, Alice stuttered, shaking her head. She looked at Shaq, then at Michelle. I'm sorry, really, I should have stopped it. Michelle raised an eyebrow. Being sorry and being quiet aren't the same as taking responsibility for what you did wrong. But at least you seem to get what happened here. Alice let out a shaky breath and turned away, avoiding Hallie's angry look. Let's go, Diane mumbled, grabbing her stuff. Hallie, furious but with no other choice, fixed her dress. She turned to Shaq one last time, sneering. Enjoy your little win, but remember, money can't buy class. Shaq didn't blink. And thinking you're better because you feel entitled doesn't make you better than anyone else. Hallie huffed and walked away, her heels clicking like gunfire on the pavement. Alice paused before leaving, looking at Shaq one more time. I am sorry, she whispered. Shaq gave her a small nod. Then do better next time. As the SUV with the women drove off, Kendrick turned to Shaq. So, are we having a pool party now? Shaq chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, we sure are. Hallie Thomas didn't know that. As she said her last mean words and left, a teenager near the pool was recording everything. Barron, a 20-year-old college student who loves social media, had filmed it all on his phone. At first, he was just filming for fun, thinking it was another rich person acting out. But when he realized it was Shaq being targeted in his own home, he knew this was something big. Barron quickly put the video on TikTok with the caption, "Rich women tried to kick Shaq out of his own pool and get destroyed." In minutes, the video started getting lots of attention. It spread across social media very fast. Within hours, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram were full of reactions. Hashtags like Nidyar Shaq versus Karen, Yas Yas Hallie exposed, Yas Yas racism, and Yadr luxury were trending. Thousands of comments came in, all showing anger. One person wrote, "Imagine telling Shaq to leave his own house." Another said, "The confidence of racist rich people is amazing." Someone else commented, "Hallie and Diane are about to lose everything." Many praised Shaq for staying calm, saying, "He handled this with more patience than I ever could." Even famous people started commenting. By the next morning, the incident was all over the news. Big news stations were talking about it. One headline said, "Shaq harassed at his own home, social media goes crazy." Another one said, "Racist socialite caught on camera, people want justice." As more people got upset, Hallie Thomas's life started falling apart. When she finally looked at her phone, she saw hundreds of missed calls and thousands of notifications. Her Instagram was filled with angry messages. Her email was stuffed with reporters asking for comments. Even her friends were texting her in panic. One text said, "Why did you do that?" Another one said, "This is really bad, Hallie." A third just said, "I can't believe what I see. This doesn't look good." At first, Hallie thought she could just wait it out, thinking the internet would forget about it. But soon, her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. She decided to put out a statement. I sincerely apologize if my words or actions were misunderstood. It was just a miscommunication. I've always supported kindness and inclusion. But her apology didn't help. People thought it sounded fake. One Twitter user commented, "Not the classic, 'I'm sorry if you were offended' apology. No one's buying this." Another said, "We saw the video, that wasn't a misunderstanding." Things got even worse when old posts from Holly came back to light. There were screenshots of her saying racist things like, "Diversity is just an excuse for mediocrity. Luxury matters," from 2017, and "I don't see color, but let's be real. Some people just don't fit in certain places," from 2020. Once her old comments were out, her reputation was gone. Her friends stopped being her friends. Other famous people didn't want to be seen with her. Even Diane and Alice, her friends from the pool, unfollowed her online. Her brand deals were dropped. She had sponsorships with fancy brands and health companies, but they all ended. Her husband's real estate business said in a statement, "We do not support Mrs. Thomas's actions and are looking at her role with us." Her neighborhood's group also said they were checking her behavior because it was inappropriate. Diane, who plans big events, lost clients quickly. Alice, who was a bit unsure during the whole thing, just deleted her social media and wouldn't talk to the press. Meanwhile, Shaq stayed cool. He posted a picture on Instagram of him relaxing by the pool, wearing cool sunglasses and drinking. His caption was, "Some people really thought they could tell me to leave my own house." Life's funny. It got millions of likes. 3 days later, Shaq turned everything around. He threw a huge pool party at his place, but instead of inviting rich people, he invited kids from poor neighborhoods. They had water slides, free food, and fun, things they might not get to enjoy often. Videos of the party went viral with captions like, "Shaq's pool party, Hallie's poolside privilege." Celebrities loved what he did. Hallie Thomas, who used to be a big deal in high society, was now nobody. But Shaq kept doing what he does best, helping others and showing how to be kind and strong. Shaquille O'Neal had dealt with racism before, seen ignorance and entitlement, but he learned something important. The best way to fight back isn't with anger, it's with making a positive impact. Instead of fighting online or letting everyone forget, Shaq saw a chance to do something good. He didn't just want to prove a point, he wanted to make a lasting change. So he called some friends, and in a few days, everything was set. He wasn't just throwing another party, he was making a statement. A week after the drama, Shaq had the biggest community pool party at his mansion. But this wasn't for fancy people. It was for the kids from poor areas, families who struggle, and local groups that don't often get to see luxury. Buses came to his mansion, full of kids from city programs. Many had never seen such a big pool or swum in such a grand place. The event was free, paid for by Shaq and some friends who wanted to help out. There were water slides, inflatable games, and live music. Free food was given out by local Black-owned businesses, helping small companies that usually don't get much attention. Athletes, entertainers, and community leaders came, spending time with the kids, teaching them and cheering them up. The vibe was amazing. Joy took over from the sadness of the last week's event. Laughter was everywhere. The same pool where Hallie had tried to act all high and mighty was now a place where everyone felt welcome. And the best part? The whole thing was shown live with millions tuning in. Shaq talked straight to the cameras. This is what true power looks like. It's not just about having money, it's about what you do with it. This pool isn't just for rich people, it's for everyone. While Shaq was making this big positive change, Hallie Thomas's life was falling apart. Her attempt to fix her public image had backfired big time. The backlash wasn't just online, it was spilling into her real life too. Brands that used to work with her quickly backed away. High-end companies that had her in their ads suddenly dropped her, saying she didn't match their values anymore. Her husband's real estate business said she was taking a break to deal with personal stuff. Really, they were just trying to save their own reputation from her mess. Her friends all left her. The other rich ladies who used to invite her to fancy parties and events just stopped picking up her calls. Diane, who was just as involved in the pool argument, got the same treatment. She got rid of all her social media within a week, unable to deal with the constant hate. Alice, the youngest of the group, hadn't said much during the incident, but not speaking up was also wrong. Seeing how everything turned out, she realized she was part of the problem. Instead of just feeling bad, she decided to do something about it. One afternoon, Shaq got an email from her. It was simple, but it seemed real. Dear Shaq, I wanted to say I am really sorry for what happened at your pool that day. I should have said something. I should have done more. Seeing how you took a bad moment and turned it into something good made me think a lot about my own actions. If there's anything I can do to make things right, I want to. If you're okay with it, I'd like to help out at your community events. No cameras, no press, just helping out. I understand if you don't want to hear from me, but I had to say this. Sincerely, Alice. Shaq read the email twice. He knew fake apologies when he saw them. This one felt different. So he replied with just 4 words, "See you at the event." As the pool party went on, Shaq took a moment to enjoy it all. The kids playing, the music, the talks, the sense of community that had grown. Alice had come and was quietly working with the volunteers, giving out towels, serving food, and staying out of the spotlight, just like she said. Shaq didn't make a fuss over it, no need to. Real change comes from doing, not just showing off. As the sun started to set, he went up on a stage by the pool, microphone in hand. To everyone who came out today, thank you. This is how we show the world who we are. Not with hate, not with division, but with action. The crowd cheered. Shaq wasn't just talking, he was making history. As the sun got lower over the estate, making the big pool look golden, Shaq stood in the middle of everyone, microphone in hand. The mood was still lively. Kids laughing, families together, music playing. But now was the time for a serious talk. He raised his hand and the crowd got quiet. I want to say something real quick. He started, his deep voice showing care and strength. A week ago, I was right here, but things were very different. Some people thought they could tell me I didn't belong in my own home. People in the crowd laughed. Some couldn't believe how ridiculous that was. But let me tell you something, Shaq went on. Money doesn't make you better than anyone. Your character does. Respect does. How you treat people when you think no one sees you. That's what counts. The crowd clapped. Shaq let the words sink in before he continued. This world tries to divide us by how much money we have, by our skin color, by where we're from. But right here, right now, look around. We've got all kinds of people sharing this moment together. That's real power. As Shaq stepped back, a little boy, maybe 9, put his hand up in the crowd. His eyes were big with curiosity. Someone gave him the microphone. Mr. Shaq, the boy asked nervously, why didn't you just kick them out when they were mean to you? The crowd chuckled, some nodding in agreement. Shaq smiled, bending down to talk to the boy. That's a good question, little man, and I'll tell you why. He looked around, making sure everyone was listening. Because the best way to win is to make the world better. The crowd was quiet for a second, then clapped again. Shaq went on, I could have just told them to leave and been done with it. But would that have changed anything? Would that have made them think about how they treat others? Probably not. But making something good out of it? Showing the world what true unity is? That's how you fight ignorance. The boy nodded, thinking about what he heard. Across town, in a fancy apartment that once threw big parties, Hallie Thomas sat by herself, watching the TV. The live stream of Shaq's event was on her screen. The sounds of kids laughing, people smiling, the sheer happiness. It was everything she had once thought was only for the elite. But now it wasn't the elite having fun. It was the very people she had always looked down on. She took a sip of wine, but it didn't taste the same. Nothing did. Her phone lay face down on the table. She hadn't checked her messages in days. The endorsements were gone. Her invites to fancy events had dried up, and even some of her so-called friends had quietly stepped back, not wanting to be linked to the controversy. She hadn't left her apartment in days, not because she was ashamed, she told herself, but because she couldn't handle the whispers, the judgmental stares, the way everyone had turned against her. And yet, as she watched Shaq speaking, something inside her wavered. For the first time, regret showed on her face, but it was too late. Her status was destroyed, her reputation was gone, and the world had moved on without her. After that evening, after the event ended, a journalist from a big news network sat down with Shaq for an exclusive interview. "This story has gone viral in a way no one expected," the interviewer said. "Hundreds of millions of people have watched the video of what happened at your pool. The world is calling this a defining moment and talks about privilege and discrimination. What do you think?" Shaq leaned back thinking, "Look, this wasn't just about me. I've been rich for a long time. I know how people see me. I know the respect my name brings. But that day at my pool, that wasn't just about Shaquille O'Neal. That was about every person who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere. Every kid who's been judged before they even got the chance to prove themselves." The interviewer nodded, listening closely. Shaq went on, "I could have made this about revenge, could have dragged them through the mud, could have sued them for everything they had. But what would that have solved? Instead, I wanted to show people something bigger." The interviewer leaned forward. "And what's that?" Shaq smiled. "That hate doesn't win. That ignorance doesn't get the final word. You can't fight fire with fire, but you can drown it with love, respect, and action. And that's exactly what we did today." The interview ended, but Shaq's words stayed with people. This wasn't just another viral controversy. This was a movement, and it was just starting. The events at Shaq's pool didn't just cause online anger, they sparked something bigger. What started as an ugly moment of discrimination turned into a nationwide discussion about racism, privilege, and the power of grace over hate. Shaq didn't want to waste a teachable moment, so he decided to take action beyond just words. 1 week after the incident, he held a press conference, standing in front of a banner that read, "Unity through Action." "I could have just let this moment pass," he told the cameras. "I could have just laughed it off, let social media do its thing, and moved on. But that's not enough. This isn't just about me. This is about the world we live in, and I refuse to let ignorance win." With that, Shaq announced the launch of the Shaquille O'Neal Unity Foundation, a program aimed at promoting racial awareness, diversity, and kindness through education, community outreach, and events. Through this initiative, schools would get resources to teach about racial equality. Underprivileged kids would have access to mentorship and leadership training. Open discussions would be held across the country, giving people from different backgrounds a chance to meet, talk, and understand each other. The message was clear: hate divides, action unites. The program got a lot of support from athletes, celebrities, and politicians, and within weeks, real changes were happening in schools and communities. This wasn't just about Shaq proving a point. This was about making sure no one else had to go through what he did. While Shaq was building something positive, Hallie Thomas was watching her world fall apart. Her attempts to fix her image had failed. The internet had labeled her as a symbol of modern-day entitlement and racism. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons, with every news outlet covering her fall from grace. Major brands that once worked with her ended their partnerships. Her invites to elite events stopped. The charity board she was on quietly removed her name. She had spent years building the perfect socialite image. But now, no amount of money could fix the damage. 1 month later, she put her fancy mansion up for sale. She can't even walk into a restaurant without people whispering, an insider told a tabloid. She's completely humiliated. And just like that, Hallie Thomas, who once thought she ruled over the right kind of people, became a ghost in high society. Some said she moved to a small town trying to escape the public eye. Others believed she was planning a comeback, but one thing was certain: the world had moved on. She had no place in it anymore. What once was a place of confrontation became something much greater. Shaq decided to open his estate's pool to the community, hosting free events that brought people together from all walks of life. Every weekend, the pool was filled with laughter. Families of all races, backgrounds, and income levels came together to celebrate unity. One weekend, a young boy walked up to Shaq. "Mr. Shaq," he said shyly, "is this the same pool those ladies got mad at you for?" Shaq chuckled, crouching down. "Yeah, it is, little man." The boy frowned. "Aren't you mad about what happened?" Shaq smiled. "Nah, because look at it now. They wanted to divide us, but instead, we turned this place into something beautiful." The boy grinned and ran back to the pool. That was the real victory. As the sun began to set, Shaq sat on a lounge chair by the pool, watching the kids splash and play. The golden light reflected off the water, creating a warm, peaceful glow. For a brief moment, he let himself think about everything that had happened. The hate, the ignorance, the confrontation, and how none of it mattered now. Because the pool, once a place where racism tried to take hold, was now a place of joy, of laughter, of unity. Shaq took a deep breath, feeling something settle inside him. Not just peace, but purpose. He had turned an ugly situation into something meaningful, and that was the real victory. As he watched a little girl help another kid out of the pool, he smiled. Maybe, just maybe, the world was learning. This wasn't just a story about racism. It's a story about responding to ignorance with strength and wisdom. Instead of seeking revenge, Shaq turned hate into an opportunity for change, proving that true power lies in grace, intelligence, and using influence for good. If this story moved you, hit like, share, and subscribe for more powerful content. Let's stand against racism together and use every moment as a chance to make the world a better place. Comment below, what would you have done in Shaq's place? Also, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.